Welcome, Uncle Sugar's Magic Circus.
Hi, Sal.
I'm Donovan Salerno. I go by Sal. This is my good friend Keith Kelly. And we're going to talk today on a topic that was brought up to us by one of our fans out in TV land.
Yep, and I'll tell you, Sal, it's getting out of control. I had to build another wing on the ancestral Kelly Mansion just to hold all the fan mail. Nice. It's crazy. 2 secretaries. My wife left me. There's mail everywhere. But this particular letter is from Lieutenant Dan Alvarez. Now, Lieutenant Dan is in TBS, and he's, when you get to the point you're going to pick your MOS in TBS, he wants to know about Recon. And just for those of you out there in TV land who didn't know, all officers go open contract, except for pilots. All officers go in without a guarantee of MOS, so you can end up being a garbage man thinking you're going to be an airborne gynecologist. Oops. So Lieutenant Dan's trying to pick his MOS. He can fill out his dream sheets. Wants to know if we would speak a little bit about Recon, Force Recon, and MARSOC, and how that all interworks.
Mm-hmm. That's a great topic. Something that I think a lot of Marines get confused about, to be honest with you.
A lot of commanders, too, unfortunately. Yeah. We'll cover that.
So I think we should start maybe on the battalion side.
Okay.
And I'll turn it over to you to start with that. So how does it work? Like, who works for who?
All right.
What is a Force Recon? What is a Battalion Recon? What is a MARSOC? How does this stuff all fit together? That's what I think we should cover today.
I think the best way to think about it is in a series of depth. So Battalion Recon goes so far behind enemy lines. Force goes yet again that much farther. And MARSOC's mission is somewhat different. And a lot of it has to do with insertion techniques, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah.
But in a nutshell...
And who they work for.
And who they work for. So Battalion Recon, also known as Amphib Recon, works for the division. They are the eyes and ears of the division. So 1st MARDIV has 1st Recon Battalion. 2nd MARDIV is 2nd Recon Battalion. 3rd MARDIV, 3rd Recon Battalion. You each get a battalion of reconnaissance. But it's not structured in a traditional sense in that it's not as big as a grunt company or a grunt battalion. A recon company only has like 72 guys. And we all know no one's ever a TO. In the history of the Marine Corps, at Ton Tavern, they were short guys. Yeah. So it's a small unit. But a lot of it has to do with insertion techniques.
And then those guys get teamed up, and that team then gets sent out to work for a battalion that's going to deploy, for example.
Correct. So they get doled out by the division. Yeah. So they are in general support. Although that pisses off the battalion commander a lot of times because he wants to control where guys go. So if the division has a need, so 2-7 is going to deploy somewhere, and they need a platoon of recon guys to go with them. That's the purview of the battalion commander, the recon battalion commander, to decide who gets to go with them. And they train to that specific mission. As for instance, when I was in 1st Recon Battalion, so we had a desert company, we had a boat company, we had a mountain company. So you do all the other skill sets, but you concentrate on that particular skill set.
Yeah. And so
it's interesting.
Organic to a unit like a battalion, don't they have scout snipers?
Yeah, in my day they did not. The scout snipers came from SCAMP, which was an intel-based organization at the time that owned snipers, but the traditional reconnaissance missions of dropping snipers off. So we'd go on a patrol with 2 snipers in the patrol. And we would do false stops along the way, and we would just drop guys off at their target point.
So organically, I think a battalion commander can send guys out to scout sniper schools and have his own organic collection. Now, when we talk about collection, this is the other thing about reconnaissance, is it is intrinsically linked with the intelligence community because your job really is as a collector.
It is. If you get caught, you're done. You don't want to get in firefights. That's not the mission.
Yeah, it's a small unit. It is heavily armed, and the guys in that unit are very well trained. But that is because if they get caught, they really need to get themselves out of a crab sandwich.
Yeah.
But they're not really designed to go on large-scale raids. However, there are 2 sides to the reconnaissance community.
And there are.
There's the green side, which is the run around behind enemy lines, find information for the commander so he can make good decisions. But also, they're in a position where they might be able to, say, set explosives on things or work with indigenous forces sometimes and do things like that as well.
Well, also, with the Stingray missions in Vietnam are a perfect example. When you can go out to a fixed point and the enemy's coming, you have dedicated. A lot of times these missions are very tailored, highly tailored to that specific event. So we might have artillery in direct support, meaning I own that artillery for X number of days. And I get to the hilltop, I see the bad guys, I can sit up there, call them in, run a destruction mission there. I have dedicated air. I may have dedicated helicopters to get me back out, which we can talk about later because we've done that before. Big fight with the air wing about that.
And so because they're going to be doing those things forward of where the friendly forces are, we have to have specific set of skills. We have a certain set of skills. They will find you. No, those skills deal with the insertion and the extraction of that unit so that they can do that. And it's not covert. It's a clandestine way, a way that's sneaky. The enemy doesn't really know that they're getting into that area. And then they can provide a live set of eyes on a target, whether that be a named area of interest that the commander is interested in keeping his eye on.
Road intersection, hilltop, whatever.
Or whether that is, an objective that is going to be the target of a follow-on raid.
Yeah.
So you can get what's called atmospherics or pattern of life information about what's going on at that building. How many guards are there? What kind of weapon systems do you see? How many entrances are there? What have they done to the entrances? Those sorts of things. And that's what the Battalion Recon is designed to do that. And special insertion and then move.
Yeah.
Usually long, very stealthy patrols, right?
Horrible patrols.
Yeah, they're pretty horrible because you
110-pound rucksack.
Yeah, you're carrying.
But technology's helped immensely. I mean, when I was first in this business, I learned how to sketch. I mean, luckily I can draw, but even if you couldn't draw, I learned how to sketch bridges. I learned how to measure things.
Yep.
I learned how to take pictures where you would go click, overlap, click, overlap, click, and swim the film back out to the ship.
Right.
Because now with technology, press a button up to the satellite, back down, and they get it within minutes.
Well, it's funny you say that. Yes, as long as everything's working, right? So interestingly, we also have this requirement that we still sketch. We still have to do the old school way because it's possible that you go to take the picture and send it via satellite, and boom, the satellite's not lined up today.
Well, it's like navigation.
Comm's not working. Gee, comm always works.
I'm shocked, Sal.
So you also still have to learn sketches. So the guys, even when I was going through, we learned how to sketch, just like you were saying.
Yeah.
We learned all sorts of techniques for that. We also learned, you almost kind of become a professional photographer. You learn all the details about how for us it was a Canon D30, but you learned how to do f-stop and,
Oh, yeah. You got smart quick. And
I don't remember any of that crap anymore.
I mean,
but at the time, I was very
I take a
good
picture
using those
with
cameras.
this.
Yeah.
What do I know? And I screw that up half the time.
Yeah.
But it's funny, and maybe it's too soon. We should delve into who goes into reconnaissance units.
I think because part of the reason that we're going to do this, right, is we're setting this up so that we can explain what these different units are, because we know in the queue coming on the next few episodes, we've got some guys from this community, right? So we've got some battalion guys lined up, we've got some force guys lined up, we've got some MARSOC guys lined up. And one of the guys that we have lined up even was with Det 1. So he transitioned between
all the way through
to Det 1, which was the first MARSOC unit, and then into MARSOC, and then retired. So
And to say that these are eclectic people would be a vast understatement.
It's an interesting group of people, that's for sure. So battalion is designed to work where in the battle space? You said it. It was kind of I say shallow, but it's behind enemy lines. But where behind enemy lines? Usually, I always heard it was up to 40 kilometers.
It could be, but again, it depends on terrain. In the Desert Storm, as a for instance war story time, we took 3 teams and assigned each team to an RCT because we were in 3 regiments from 1st Mar Div. We're going to go through the minefield. So days prior, we sent a team dedicated to each RCT to find them a path through the minefields.
That's a regimental combat team,
yes.
by the way.
And so we gave them no depth. We had air on standby for extract. We had artillery on standby for covering fires if they got detected. And they went as far through the minefields all the way up to the Iraqi lines. They were in the Iraqi trenches. The Iraqis never knew it. And then they got back out, and we dropped B-52 loads to cover their extract. That being said, we didn't know exactly how far they were going to go. So we relied on technology. And these guys literally moved at night and buried themselves during the day in the sand. And then got up, moved again. Great mission. Came back, gave us all the intel, found out the minefields, a lot of them, it was pure bullshit. The Iraqis, it's the Middle East. Yeah. They didn't bother burying the mines. They threw them on top. Yeah. So you could walk between them.
That's funny.
Stupid asses.
That's funny. So then I guess the next logical step is to talk about Force Recon. So and this is funny because when I first got picked up to go to Force, I was a radio operator first.
That's right. Tell us about that. How did you end up in Force?
So I graduated from comm school as a 2531. I think they're 0631s nowadays, field radio operator. Yeah. And I was checking into 8th Comm Battalion at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. And the way it works is you get off the plane, and by the time you get everything worked out, it's very late. It's 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning by the time you're rolling into your headquarters element there at Camp Lejeune. And there was this steely-eyed sergeant came out of the dark, no kidding, as I got off the van with a bunch of other comm guys, and he must have just been eyeballing us from his car.
That's what they do.
Yep. And he was like, "Oh, those guys don't look fat." And so he walked over to me and another guy. And he's like, "Hey, you guys want to go to Force Recon?" And like I didn't know what that was, so what I heard was Forest Recon. So I thought, Forest Recon,
swing from the
that sounds
trees.
interesting, yeah. So I did what any young PFC would do, graduating from a school and coming to their first duty station.
Yeah.
I said, "Yes, Sergeant," and I got in the van.
Get in the van.
So no kidding, I got in his van, and the next day I took the indoc,
Yeah.
and I passed it, ish. I got all the way towards the end, and I got hypothermia,
Oh yeah.
and bad enough that I was like not conscious anymore.
Oops.
I was moving. I was like
Yeah.
an animated corpse at that point. So for those who don't know, Battalion Recon, Force Recon, and MARSOC has a much more complex screening process. We'll talk about that in another episode. But for Force Recon and Battalion Recon, there's an indoctrination test.
Yeah, if you don't pass, it's not a. Maybe we should explain it. It's not an easy deal to
It's
get
very,
in
very challenging.
to do this. First thing is, for a long time they wouldn't take you if you weren't an NCO, and that vacillates back and forth. Sometimes we take non-NCOs.
It's a maturity issue.
It is a maturity issue, and it's also an experience issue.
Right.
And if you haven't been around the block a few times, I don't have time to teach you how to get around
Not the
block.
case for officers, though. It kind of runs the gambit. Depends
The
on
lieutenants
ability.
all take an indoc. I was doing over the horizon raids in Coronado at the time, and I wanted to go to Recon, and I knew some guys up there. And the battalion commander came down and basically interviewed me. Him and Bill Coffey. It was Tom Head and Bill Coffey came down, and they're like, "Hey, come here. You want to go to Recon?" And Bill Coffey's the size of the Empire State Building.
Legendary.
Yeah, okay. His arms are bigger than my chest. To this day, I was with him 2 weeks ago in California.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, I want to go to Recon. And what's your background? Grunt, I did this many deployments, I'm a company commander, as a lieutenant, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, okay, yeah. How many, the old gay, how many pull-ups can you do? How many you want? Okay, you're in. But the lieutenants go through a much more...
So it is. It's very physical.
Yeah.
And it vacillates between 1 and 3 days. It depends
Swimming,
on the unit,
running,
but
you gotta stay
swimming,
up,
running,
map
carrying
tests.
heavy weight on your back for
Yeah.
long periods of time, pushing things.
There's
carrying
interviews,
things.
too. I mean, I used to sit on the boards.
And a psych eval as well.
Yeah.
When I went through it,
Uh-huh.
they screen your medical record. They do a psych eval, make sure you're not. Because weirdly, you would think you want somebody who's like psychotic,
Yeah.
but they don't. They want somebody who's pretty level-headed and mature,
Which is
but
odd.
also has some sociopathic tendencies. Maybe I don't know. I just
I know. Think of the guys we
No,
were with.
I know. I do know. I do know. I'm saying I don't know. So anyway, I took the indoc and I passed it ish
Yeah.
because I got to the end and literally I was butt stroking the doc who was trying to put me into the ambulance to get me out of there. It was kind of near the end, but the my team leader a lot of times the team leaders will run the indocs.
They're screening, yeah. That's
Because it's like the NFL draft. They're running
Exactly.
it and they're going, I like that guy, I like that guy,
Yeah.
that guy's a piece of crap, whatever.
Yeah.
So my team leader saw something in me. I think it was maybe my don't quit attitude when I was in zombie
That's a big
mode.
part of it.
And they picked me up. So
Yeah.
I went back and got and did it again and passed it.
You know the old gag: swim till you pass out.
Yeah.
And then shallow water blackouts are very common in the swimming dock. Pull them
Absolutely.
off the bottom of the pool, resuscitate them, throw them back in the water. If you don't want to get back in the water, get on the bus
Yeah.
and run until you drop. Rucksacks, the whole 9 yards in there.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest with you, Coffee ran the indocs. I stayed out of it. And but there's a lot. You're right. There's an intangible piece that they're looking
Yeah.
for,
They're
and you have
looking
to
at-
have a GT. You can't be a dummy.
Yeah, no, you got to be smart too.
Yeah.
And they're looking for the ability to push you to your limit, and then that's where the evaluation really starts.
Uh-huh.
So it's funny because a lot of guys I saw a lot of guys come to run the indoc that were in phenomenal shape. They looked like Adonis, you know. They
Yeah.
looked like
Oh, yeah.
the guys from 300,
Uh-huh.
and they'd quit about halfway through.
Yeah.
Because it was a mental issue.
And,
right?
and
So-
we used to think about guys. We had guys built like pipe cleaners, and they go all day. And we have other guys built like Arnold Schwarzenegger,
Yeah.
and they wouldn't make it. Or some of them did.
Well,
There's
they're-
one time
absolutely.
suck. They'd sink like bricks in the water. I sank like a brick every time I got in the water
Yeah.
until I got smart about how to swim because a gunny taught me how.
Right.
It's the non-quit piece. It really is it.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, and the indocs are interesting. We'd start off with 100 kids, and get 8 at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And there's the
Very challenging to get into.
I
for
also
sure.
the part I loved, and we was particularly hard on the officers because I sat on those boards, is the old questions without answers routine.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd sit on a board and bring this schmuck in and just start asking them questions that had no answer. I just want to see where your head's at, and let them run. And the whole gag, you and I teach silence all the time, and we just sit there. Here's some more rope, schmuck.
Yeah, keep
going.
talking.
Yeah, and just talk yourself out of a job. Get out of here.
Right. So I took the induct, I got in, and that's where the education began for me. So Force Recon designed in 2 parts. There's more to it, but basically 2 parts. There's the green side work and the black side work. What they call the green side work and the black side work. The green side work is your field. It's field craft. It's infantry type things. It's machine gunnery. It's in
mortars,
place.
call for fire,
It's
call
all
for air.
of that plus patrolling and doing it. It's different than a patrol in the
It's
infantry.
infinitely different,
The
and
idea
it's
is you
hard.
got 4 to 6 guys, and they're carrying all their stuff with them for a, let's say, 10-day operation where they have to sneak in, find an objective area, observe that objective area without getting caught, report back during that period of time, gather up all their stuff, leave no trace behind, and then infiltrate their way back through a number of different
No one ever knew you were
methodologies and get
there
out
if you
of
did it right.
If you did it right. So a lot of work on the green side. And then the black side was, so you're talking about 4 to 6 men, right?
Yep.
4 to 6 men does not have a lot of firepower. No matter how much crap you pack, no matter how much more weight you think you can throw on, you're not going to get in a fight.
And you're planning for every contingency, which is where the weight comes in.
You're not going to get in a fight with a platoon or a company level element and win.
No.
In fact, we used to have a joke. We used to say our motto was, if the enemy sees us, we run. And if they chase us, we run faster.
But it's true.
And that was part of the reason why I had to be in really phenomenal shape, because that's really it. That's the one side. The other side is you could take those 4 to 6 man teams and put them all together into a platoon or a company size element, and you can do raids.
Yeah.
So one of the other big missions for the reconnaissance elements is it's like I'm trying to think of a good example from the movies, but they're going into a location and taking that location down for a purpose.
Yeah, waterborne destruction raids are the big one that comes to mind because we do a lot of over the horizon inserts. So you're on LPD, 20 plus miles out, throw the little rubber boats in the water, and then the whole navigation piece comes in, which is harder than Chinese arithmetic. If you've never navigated on the open ocean in a little rubber boat in the middle of the night, you haven't lived. And you cannot rely on the electronicals, because the electronicals notoriously go down because salt water eats electronicals, and you're back to doing what Magellan did in the dark.
Sure.
But that's a lot of those raids you're talking about are waterborne raids because they're fast and quick, and that's what we do.
So I can't think of an example from the movies, but I can think of one from real life. I did get to participate in one raid while I was at 2nd Force Reconnaissance Company in 1988. We were escorting Kuwaiti reflagged oil tankers in the Gulf, kind of working with Saddam against the Iranians at that time.
I was at first at the time. I remember.
No kidding.
Yeah.
So I was on the MEU that got tasked to. What happened was the Samuel B. Roberts hit a mine. This was an ocean mine. A ship hit the mine. We were actually the first ship to get there, and we evacuated the wounded. Sent all the information back. Got pictures of. They asked us. That wasn't me, but my platoon dove on the minefield and got pictures and sent them back to D.C.
Yeah.
They said, "Oh yeah, that's Iranian." And so they planned this operation as a retaliation for that minefield.
Yeah.
And so what it was, they were going to sink a ship, they were going to shoot down some airplanes, and they were going to do some oil platform raids. Now, I say oil platform raids, but these oil platforms were not active oil platforms. They were being used as reconnaissance sites by the Iranians out in the...
To keep an eye on the Gulf.
Absolutely.
And to load silkworms on.
Yeah, exactly. So in 1988, April of 1988, we did one of those raids. There were 2 platforms. One the SEALs were supposed to do, but naval gunfire actually lit it on fire. They weren't able to land. Ours, everything went smooth. Shout out to the Anglico guys. Did 20 minutes of naval gunfire on this platform, and there were these large tanks. It was a large platform, actually. I say it's a platform. It was actually 7 platforms connected by bridges and things. The Sasan gas oil separation platform. And you can Google the operation if you're interested in it. It's Operation Praying Mantis.
Yeah.
Anyway, these guys did a phenomenal job. They did 20 minutes of naval gunfire, and there were these big tanks of phosgene gas, which was a byproduct of very, very poisonous.
Welcome to World War I.
Right. It's basically mustard gas.
Yeah.
It's a byproduct of the process of pulling the oil up out of the shale in the water. But anyway, those things, they wanted 20 minutes of naval gunfire and 20 minutes of Cobra strikes before we did the raid.
Yeah.
And they never touched those tanks.
That's magic.
So they did a phenomenal job.
Yeah.
They were using all air bursts and stuff like that.
Yeah. And
then we did an insertion technique called fast roping, where we went in on helicopters, and our platoon. This was a raid, so it was a platoon level thing. So all those 4 to 6 man teams are combined together into one unit, and we did this raid. And we fast roped, which is basically you throw a rope out the back of a helicopter. It flies in, it stops. I'll show you. I've actually got a video. I'll show you how it looks. The rope comes out, and the guys slide down the rope.
Yeah. It's fun as shit when no one's trying to kill you.
It's fairly dangerous.
You think? You're holding on to a rope when you're 45 feet in the air.
And P.S. there's people shooting at you, which is not fun. So yeah, we come in on this raid. Everything was going smooth. Very detailed planning.
Yeah.
A lot of planning went into it. And I remember the door gunner opening up with the 50 cal out the side of the 46, and I was like, oh, here we go.
Yeah.
Rope went out. Everybody got on the rope, and in training, you're taught to use points of contact, right?
Mm-hmm.
2 hands, your chest, your legs, and your feet all touch the rope.
Yeah.
Because that gives you more
3
friction.
points of contact minimum.
Yeah, well, lots more friction on
Yeah.
the rope. It actually lets you control your descent a lot easier because there's nothing holding you on. You're just holding on to a rope and sliding down. It's crazy. Well, in this particular case, how many points of contact do you think most people had?
2.
Yeah, it was very quick.
Yeah.
People got on the rope and got off the rope as quick as
Well,
they
you're
could.
carrying a ton of ammo. You're carrying weapons. You're carrying demo, and you're drenched in adrenaline.
So my silly fog of war story, as I hit the deck, Keith knows this story. That's why he's laughing. As I hit the deck, my magazine falls out of my weapon. Our primary weapon at that time was an MP5, it was a 9mm, little submachine gun kind of thing. And
Great piece of gear.
Oh yeah, yeah. The bolt system in that was phenomenal.
Yeah.
It never jammed ever, but very rarely. Anyway, I hit the deck, my magazine falls out, and I kick it just like in the cartoon. Like, as I go to grab it, I kick it, and it spins across the deck. Holy crap, man! I got 1 bullet in my weapon right now. So I panic a little bit, and I see where it went. I scramble over, and I grab my magazine, I slam it back in there. I'm like, and then it dawns on me at that moment, I have 6 other magazines on my chest right now. I have 6 other all I had to do was go, oh shit, I dropped my magazine, pull another one out. But see, this is fog of war stuff, right? Your mind doesn't work. Your mind shuts down. The fight or flight shit kicks in, man. And you're just
Adrenaline's a bitch, and literally your peripherals, because of, and I'm not a doctor, but your
vision
peripheral narrows.
Yeah, it's true.
Unless you've actually had that happen to you, you're thinking I'm making this up out in TV land. I'm not. Your field of vision will, which is a primordial instinct to focus on what it is you're going to kill or what's trying to kill you.
Yeah,
However, it kind of is a pain in the ass because you really need your peripherals.
You need your smarts too, and that goes away as well, right? Anyway, so that was Operation Praying Mantis. We did this raid on the oil platform. We took it and we brought in the second wave. They set explosives. Mm-hmm. There was a massive explosion. We sank this thing. It was completely destroyed.
Now, this is an interesting. Maybe we can talk about this a little bit. Part of what, if you think that what we're just talking about now here, part of the problem is, I'll call it a problem. A lot of senior commanders either don't know how to use recon, and I mean, I graduated command and staff college, and the only reason we talked about recon is me and a buddy of mine, will remain nameless because he's a Navy SEAL and the stuff he did, but he and I pushed the issue in our conference group about how to use these special pieces of human beings to certain missions. Most commanders either don't want to because they don't know how to, or they get pissed off because we take a ton of assets up. Now, you think about that.
That's true.
I'll go back to that story with the minefields. And this is in the middle of a goddamn war. So we fly 246s out, and we land them at our little compound. And we're going to dedicate those 46s to that mission. As the XO, I took care, it's my job. So I get the pilots, young kids, good goddamn captains, lieutenants, and the crew chiefs, good staff sergeants, gunnies. Drag them in. I get the team leaders and the teams. I put them all in a tent. I get all the MREs I can find. Eat together, sleep together. You guys get to know each other. And I made a promise. We'll get you out. This goes bad. We're getting you out. Pilots are on board. We got it. I mean, literally, the planes are parked 50 feet from the tent. I don't know how the tents didn't blow over. And the promise was made. You're going to stay here until the mission is over. Pilots are like, got it. They know each other now by first name. They're shaking hands. Off our kids go. The goddamn air wing pulls the planes. We'll send you a couple more. No. You missed the point. I need that eyeball. I need that goddamn 25-year-old staff sergeant on his mission to know that we will get him out. And so it's that use of assets. And of course, I lost, Major Kelly, take a fly and leap. And so the air wing says, fuck you, I'll send you 2 other planes. What's the big deal? But that's just a microcosm of the problem.
Yeah.
And we talked about that. And I got dedicated artillery for these guys. And that's cannons that got to stay, if the call comes, if they're doing something else, they got to switch fires to my guys.
Yeah.
I get dedicated fast movers. Same thing. Those planes are doing something. Radio call comes in. They got to divert for my guys. Now, that's a lot of support for 6 cats out there. But the mission weighs heavily enough where we should allow that.
Well, this is an interesting thing because what we're dealing with here is it's a risk aversion thing.
Yeah,
because,
absolutely.
Because putting those 4 or 6 guys, just depends on when you went through there. But,
Yeah.
if putting that small unit out there, there's a fairly high risk for those guys, right?
It's monumental.
commanders really don't like to take those kinds of risks, and it's resource intensive, but it's also the potential. So what you end up seeing a lot of times in wars, they don't use them in that capacity. They don't use small teams that get sent out for infiltration missions a lot anymore. What they usually tend to do is aggregate them into larger units, put them in vehicles, and then use them as a strike force, which is also, I mean, it is in their wheelhouse.
It's a viable mission, but, you know, we learned this in the beginning of the current unpleasantness. When you put recon teams in thin-skinned vehicles and say, go forth through town X, Y, and Z and see what you can tell me. Are you drunk? Yeah. And the desert, as you always say, the tyranny of distance. These missions, but so part of the problem is, we'll go back to what Lieutenant Dan's asking. These guys got to be ready to do any of those missions. Yeah. And desert missions, and you can be diverted. It happens all the time. I'm all jocked up for a desert mission. Sorry, something changed. We're flying you, we're putting you on a C-130 in an hour, and you're going to a mountainous environment, a cold weather mountainous environment. Yeah. Great. I love that. But you have to be able to do that. So that brings in the eclectic mindset of some of these screwballs that we have. Yeah.
So a very storied history. It kind of started in World War II with the Raiders.
It did, absolutely.
And this, I'm going to bring it all back around here by talking about the Raiders. So the Raiders in World War II, phenomenal job in the South Pacific and the Solomon Islands. That spirit of having a unit that can do these special raid missions. They were disbanded after World War II.
Correct.
Something like, I think it was the precursor to the amphibious reconnaissance units was like...
In Korea. Because I know a guy who was with
group or something, I think it was called. And then that was disbanded, and then they started the recon battalions and the force recon units. Yeah. And the idea was, you know, there's levels. So battalion and
there's a lot of testing
for the MEF, right?
Yeah, and it comes all the way around, because the testing during Korea, locking out of submarines, rubber boats, the boats got better, the motors got better. And then disbanded again. Then Vietnam came, reinstituted again.
Absolutely, and they did phenomenal work. And we stand on the shoulders of giants at Force for the guys who did the work that they did in Vietnam. Yeah, and maybe we can see if we can't get some of those guys on the show. That would be phenomenal. But then they disbanded again, and then so back and forth. Finally, we get to the point where they need to establish this new SOCOM unit. The Marine Corps said no to that for a lot of years.
Oh yeah.
I pass no judgment on the decisions that were made.
It takes 7 shows to cover that.
They were made for what was thought to be the good of the organization as a whole. So whatever. Yeah. So late in the game, we decide we're going to join SOCOM. So they look around the Marine Corps and basically say, all right, well, the closest thing we have to that right now is the Force Recon units, right? Yep. So they took Force and they literally just turned them into. They took First Force actually. I want to say it was in. Do you remember the year? It was 2003?
I was out by then, but give or take. John will know. We'll bring John on the show.
We'll have John. I'll talk about the history of it. But they took First Force and basically said, okay, you are now the pilot program for MARSOC, for the Marine Special Operations Unit. You are now called Detachment 1, MARSOC Detachment 1. And then that was a few years, and then they disbanded them and established MARSOC. Took all the Force Recon companies and turned them into MARSOC battalions.
Now we've reinstituted Force. Battalions stayed the same.
And now they're trying to refill up the Force units as well.
And it's so serendipitous. I go back to that same stupid mission in Desert Storm, which was one of many. So hooray for us, we find 3 paths for 3 regiments to get through the minefield, and we go kick Saddam's ass. Yay, team. Come home, and they disband Recon Battalion. What? How stupid are you? And I won't go into who made the decisions, but I know who they were. And that being said, that obviously didn't last very long. But then when you have to reconstitute that, these things cannot be created in a day. You're back to square one. You have to find. Now we have not sent anybody to jump school, to dive school, to ranger school, to all these eclectic schools about weapons and intelligence gathering, all the other schools we got to jam down these guys' throats in a short period of time. Once you break that cycle, and you got to start again, it's a laborious process.
Well, it's one of the soft truths, right?
It is.
SOF, or Special Operations Forces, cannot be mass-produced. And they can be mass-produced, but it takes so long to make a guy. It takes 10 years to make a true SOF operator. Yeah. By the time you get him through all the schooling, you get him some experience. Yeah. He gets some maturity and some wisdom in the field.
And we forget about other things too. I mean, we break guys.
Marine Corps not good at keeping guys in that realm, right?
Oh, God. So another huge story. Yeah,
we like to make people very diverse.
When I was in, we were still taking platoon sergeants out of recon and sending them on recruiting duty in the drill field. Yeah, 3 years out of the business. You got to come back. None of your calls are any good anymore. Oh, by the way, we have a new dive rig. Oh, we have new parachutes. You got to send everybody back through all these schools. We've broken that cycle, kind of.
Yeah.
where they don't have to do that anymore.
Well,
A B billet is a non-traditional billet in the Marine Corps.
It's
Meaning,
like you have to do either recruiting duty or drill instructor duty.
Yeah.
It's like you're giving back to the Marine Corps.
But
with the establishment of MARSOC and the establishment of the MOSs for the special operators, right? So the critical skills operator and the special operations officer, that closed the loop for those guys.
yeah, it did.
And so now there's not a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
The external billets are usually within SOCOM or within SOF or related to SOF in some way, which allows them to maintain that credibility and that proficiency in their field.
That tie-in between straight infantry, so to speak, and intelligence, which Recon Battalion or Force Recon crossed, they've also started, right after I got out, making intelligence officers could go to Recon as platoon commanders, which before was all grunts. You're not a grunt, don't apply. An interesting dynamic, and that, it would take a long time to talk about that, but our current boss was one of those guys. That's how he was in First Recon.
That's right.
And that's how he got there. He started as a ground intel guy.
Yeah.
It's an offshoot MOS.
Yeah.
But I think at first I was kind of...
Well, as we continue the Intel series as well, so just for you guys out in TV land, it's hard to schedule people. You can't just keep scheduling all the Intel guys all in a row. So what we're going to do, we're going to start this Recon series. We've started the Intel series, and then as we bring people in, we'll just add to the next layer of the series.
Well, I would like a cook series.
We could do that.
I like to eat.
It doesn't. We're going to pull in some air wing guys. We're going to do some swing with the wing stuff later. Like as we progress here, as we get better at this, we'll start pulling more and more.
How about Gray's registration? Can we get them in here?
But this episode's about Recon. Let's keep it on Recon for the ending here, my brother. Keith, I mentioned it in the first episode, but you run a company that makes rings, and I know that recently, because I know a lot of guys out there are interested in getting.
We're selling a lot of stuff now.
Recon and Force Recon rings.
Yeah.
And you've just recently changed vendors, and now you've got some new products.
Well, we're using some sterling silver now. We were just using steel before, and stainless. Now we found a silver distributor, much faster turnaround time. We're almost in up to where like Amazon. We'll get it to you in a week.
Okay, good.
And First Recon Battalion, Second Recon Battalion, Force Recon rings, and MARSOC rings.
Awesome.
And if you want to look it up online, it's Steel Jacket Designs with an S.
Yeah, I'll put a link in.
Okay, yeah, put the link in with equid.com and just Google. You can order the rings right online if you want, or if you're on the East Coast, you can get a hold of me or Sal, and we'll go from there.
Sounds good, bro.
They're handsome and beautiful.
They are handsome and beautiful, just like us. All right, buddy.